I had no structure as an organization. I was a guy that was good at fixing stuff, and I had created a company of that, which is by nature chaotic, and it certainly doesn't provide a strategy. And so what we end up doing as we grow a business is we react to what's in front of us instead of having the time to step back and look at it strategically, understand where we're going, and then figure out how to fit the different solutions into an overall strategy.
This is the Staying Power Podcast, a show that explores the challenges business owners face as they grow. I'm Brandon Hall.
And I'm Thomas Castelli.
And together we ask the tough questions to show you that running a business is not for the faint of heart. But if you have staying power, you'll overcome your challenges and achieve lasting success.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Staying Power Podcast. Today, we're joined by Tony Chiappetta, founder and CEO of AMC Solutions, an IT company that helps businesses build modern IT systems to make every employee more productive and grow their business. Today, we discuss the challenges Tony faced when, after being in business for 12 years, he had to take a step back and rework his entire business, including recreating processes, letting some employees go, trimming down his client base, and the system that he uses to run his business today. Tony, thanks for taking the time to come on the show today. Would you be able to give our listeners a little information on your background?
Absolutely. So started my working career at 15 as a garbage man, realized I wanted to work indoors and work my way into an office. I really enjoyed what IT was happening back in the day, so I worked my way into following the IT guy around, and he let me mirror him and realize that's kind of what I want to do going to school after actually starting biology pre-med. I switched over to business information systems, got a job for a very large manufacturer distributor, very large organization as their first network administrator back in 2000. Moved them from green screens to Windows 2000 back in the day. Really enjoyed doing it. And a couple of years later, started AMC as an entrepreneur. And we provide modern IT services for organizations with between 20 and 500 computer using people with heartbeats and souls. I don't like the word users, but that's where we're at. Doing it for about 18 years now.
Nice. So when you first started AMC Solutions, how did you know that it was the right time to start that business? Why at that point in time?
So this is probably going to sound weird, but after working a couple years in a cubicle, and I love my time at the place that I had a great experience, but I just felt like I had a higher calling or I had to do more. And one day, and it was on good terms, I just decided that I was going to try something else, and I resigned and ended up doing work with my previous employer thereafter, but just left because I felt like I had to. And I don't really have a reason or a why. I just did, and I opened up the phone book and started calling people, which was really uncomfortable, asking if they needed IT support and service. And so I don't have a real reason other than a gut feeling. And I think I remember saying if I jump in with 2 feet and try my best and stay honest, I can't see things not working out. So just believing and doing it, and one way or another, it's just worked out.
That's good reason. So when you first started the business, did you start it just a solo effort, or did you have a partner? Did you have employees from the start? How did that initial business start?
So I lived with my mom. I was 22, 23 years old. She had a bonus room where we had a pool table, and that became my office. And I started helping people and building computers by myself or whatever I could do on the pool table as I needed to. And so there was no partner, there was no anything. It was just kind of me and some belief. And that's what started it off. And it was trying, because reading or going through the phone book, looking for people and hearing those first couple hundred no's, it was definitely tough at first, but just persisted.
Definition of bootstrapping right there. Bootstrap the business. So how many employees do you have today?
Today we've got 17 employees, all of them with career paths and a place where they're going, because that's really our primary focus, is they are our product, because we're a service industry. And so that's our focus, is taking great care of our people and make sure that everybody that comes to AMC has a next step in their career, and it's going with a strategy and a vision for them personally as well.
When you say take care of your people, what does that mean?
So I'm going to zoom out a little bit and say that there's this whole concept of life work balance. And I think it was Richard Branson that I heard that said that that's a farce, that there's no such thing as life work balance in life. There's really life work harmony. And so when I think of taking care of our people, I think of how can we align their professional goals to their personal goals in life and make sure that they're getting satisfaction out of what they do from a work perspective and a career perspective, because we spend a lot of time together on this. And so that aligns with where they want to go as people and what their personal goals are, and try and make it that we're going on the right path that's congruent with the business and personal goals align.
And how do you figure that out? Like, how do you figure out what it is that your employees want to accomplish, and then how do you help them get there aside from just giving them a paycheck?
Yeah, so there's no better technology than just talking to them and asking them, and it changes. What might have been important last year is now not as important. Maybe they've got married, or there's a significant life event. They want to have children. They want a house. And so understanding and having those conversations through a process of setting, it's just like business goal setting. It's creating that process for each of us. Every year, every person lays down what their personal goals are, and we help them with that process, and we jot it down, and we work towards it.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So if we shift gears just a little bit, I know in today's day and age, IT is obviously very important, infrastructure and all of that. How important is it to have a modern IT infrastructure or system set up at this point in time?
Man, that's a loaded question. So it's monumental in the fact that what I did 20 years ago is no longer the recommended path. So setting up servers and PCs, and Microsoft kind of guides our ship in a lot of ways. They're like a North Star. If you look to them, you can find the direction of our industry. And Satya Nadella has made it very clear over the past few years, it's no longer about servers and PCs. It's about services like cloud services and mobility being having a laptop or a mobile device and having access to all of your systems. And in doing so, it just allows us to have, like, the way that we operated before in the server PC world where we have this 100 megabit connection to a server or whatnot. It's not in line with today's security threats. That's changed a lot over the last 20 years and the last 20 weeks. It's ever evolving. The bad guys are getting better. It's not in line with how we want to be mobile, right? We want to be able to work from anywhere these days. Pandemic, no pandemic, it still is really helpful to be able to crack open your laptop, your tablet, and have access to all of your data and your apps, no matter where you are. And in collaborating, we work more and more in this virtual world. So having the ability to work on documents together and be face to face through video or in person, and still have an ability to update a PowerPoint presentation simultaneously or an Excel spreadsheet is really important to basically to be more productive as a group. We work so much more in groups these days. And so with the traditional method of having a server in the closet or even a server in the cloud versus having services that deliver your data and your applications and your security, it really allows you to get more out of your day and makes your day a little bit better at the same time. Because if you can be anywhere and quickly, you could be at the kids' t-ball game and quickly flip open your mobile phone and send that important doc, it goes in line with that life work harmony that we're talking about, so that you can have the ability where work is not a place you go, but it's a thing you do on your time.
Based on your experience, what are the most common mistakes that small businesses make in regards to their IT system or security or anything along those lines?
So most of it all comes back to a reactive approach. And I know this from my own personal experience of running our organization. I'm going to share a little bit of our story because it applies into what every business seems to go through. So when I started the organization, I was 22 years old, and I loved what I was doing and I loved people, and we grew through referral mostly because I really enjoyed just being able to help people, and I was able to so they would take me to a new location or they'd refer me. And so I would get one customer and another, and I was off to the races. I was growing. I had a business, and it was really exciting. And we grew employees, and I basically had helpers that I would hire. and bring on. I was not trained in management. I was not trained in hiring. I was not trained in creating process, really. I was just a really good engineer. So my employment process would really be do you have a pulse and are you willing to take a low rate? And then I'll just train you to be like me, which is terrible. But that was how we started. And so I would fix and I would go from one location to another and I'd fix problems. And when I'd go, I'd show up and I'd realize that a server hadn't been backed up in a couple months since the last time I was there. There's old tape backups back in the day. And so I'd ask the client, hey, I noticed your server hasn't backed up since 2 months ago. Is that a problem? And they'd say, oh, yeah, it's a major problem. So for 150, 160 bucks, I'll monitor your backups every day. And if they're not working, I'll fix them. And so great. So I built this new service, this annuity monthly recurring revenue stream and doing it. And I was seeing that that's really beneficial from a business perspective, right? So I was growing as a business, and then I realized, well, antivirus needs to be updated. So I'll provide antivirus for $4 a computer. I'll monitor your network. And I had all these different tools that I was implementing, and we grew like crazy because I was selling things at a really attractive rate because I was also not too schooled in how to price out things. And at the time, any revenue was good revenue. And I'm going to share everything completely with you guys because the more open I am with how terrible I was running the business, I think people will hopefully relate. And so
pricing's like such a huge issue that every business faces regardless. So I can't wait to dive more into that, but keep going. Sorry.
Wonderful. So we would continue down this path and I would bring on customers, and it really depended on their needs, but I was offering so many different tools. I would anti-spam, I would provide antivirus, anti-spy, all the antis. I would provide all of these. And so I felt like because of all these tools, I would be so proactive that I would start offering unlimited IT support as well. And it was wonderful. So that if I do all of these different tools, now I can be this fixed rate to provide unlimited support. And people would say, yeah, that sounds great. I don't have to worry about it fluctuating month to month. And that's a fair rate. And depending on people's budget, I would offer anywhere from just backups only to maybe include remote support, maybe include on-site support, maybe include a block of hours. And people were great with it. So it was very easy to sell because it was based on budget of what people had. And I scaled that business to about 24 employees. I would pretty much, any revenue was good revenue. I would take a project. If you wanted to test my service, I would say, sure, I'll install this firewall or this phone system and we'll figure it out. And you'll see that we're the guys, and give me a chance to be your IT provider, where we provide flat rate IT services for everything. That was the goal, right? Because monthly recurring revenue is the goal.
You're alluding to this big mistake. I'm assuming that you got to the point where you realized all revenue is not good revenue. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So we would install a new firewall for a person that was just looking to test our service. And a firewall is a device that, as you may be aware, that connects all the computers in the office to the internet and people from the outside back into the office. So we'd install a firewall because we'd basically meet on a first-time engagement. We'd put it in, everything's great. All right, thank you very much, sir. We're done here. And the next day we'd get that emergency call that the salespeople on the East Coast can no longer access the CRM application. And they're really upset because they aren't able to get their job and they're missing out on a big sale. We put a phone system in on a network, and then we find out that we had to install some networking equipment and now some other aspect was broken. We didn't have enough information about our clients' businesses or their technology to make the project successful. And the same would be true if we were just providing backup only services. When that server eventually crashed and burned, because they always do, it's hardware, right? We would get that call and it'd be an emergency. It'd usually be on the day of payroll, where it's very high stakes and everything needs to happen at a certain time. And the server has a smoldering smell, and it's our job to get it up and running. Well, we've been providing backup service and we have backup disks, but we may need to update the server, and we can migrate your data, but we need to upgrade the applications. We don't know where those applications are. We don't have the CDs for them. We don't have the information about who accesses what or how to install certain things. And so it just became this constantly chaotic environment where something would happen. Even simple things like setting up a new employee for a client. You've been my IT guys for 10 years. You don't know to set them up. So we scanned a PDF instead of JPEG. I'm so sorry. I'll try harder. But we just hired somebody new that didn't know that. And so I couldn't try harder. And I was killing myself. And it got to a point where every week was an overnight IT guy in the closet trying to save the day, stressful environment. And I got to this breaking point where I had an employee that I had just promoted come to me, and he broke down and he started crying. He said, "Boss, you can keep the money, keep the promotion. I don't want the responsibility. I don't like being in the spot where I'm always failing. And I just want to go back to just the way it was. Working here 40 hours or 80 hours feels like 120."
So basically, you got to the point where because you weren't being selective with the clients that you're taking on board, you were overworking your staff. And the breaking point, it sounds like, was that employee coming to you and just kind of calling it out and saying, I don't want to grow if growing means working an insane amount of hours because I've already been doing that. It's already very painful. Did I get that right?
That's pretty dead on. What I was hitting the ceiling. I had no structure as an organization. I was a guy that was good at fixing stuff, and I had created a company of that, which is by nature chaotic, and it certainly doesn't provide a strategy. And so I see that, to go back to your original question of the mistakes, what we end up doing as we grow a business is we're growing and we have sometimes a lack of vision of where we're going because we're so caught up in the day to day of trying to get that sale and then deliver on it, deal with whatever complaint may arise, make sure we're providing excellent customer service, that we don't have time to get outside of that. And what we often do in that situation is we react to what's in front of us instead of having the time to step back and look at it strategically, understand where we're going, and then figure out how to fit the different solutions into an overall strategy. And so in our case, when we got to that point, it was 2014. I had 24 employees. I was thinking I should probably, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. This business is broken. This business model doesn't work. Maybe I should sell this company. Well, it wasn't worth anything because it was me with a bunch of helpers. And so the evaluation was non-existent. We had clients from $200 to $15,000 a month and everywhere in between. Everybody had the same expectations. We're the IT guys. We should understand everybody's organization. We should understand their business, and we should just know. But I wasn't able to hit those expectations when I was just monitoring a backup. And some clients had no contract. They'd call us just when they needed us. Same expectations as the $15,000 a month contract.
So there's a lot to unpack here, but before we jump into like resetting the expectations and repricing and all that, what made you think that the business model was broken? Why not just throw more people at the problem?
That is exactly what I'd been doing. And I had been growing, and okay, we have more issues are coming in. So I need to stock the help desk more. And as I stocked the help desk more, I couldn't necessarily afford the high level talent with 5-10 years of experience. I generally get somebody that's fresh out of school and we'll train them in the AMC way. And so they were coming in and they'd be pretty green from a technical perspective, which is great because we would hire them for personality. And I still buy into that model, bring them in for core values, but they didn't have a ton of technical experience and we didn't have a ton of process around documenting our client businesses and their networks. And so with those two things, it was a recipe for failure. And if you were to call in to our help desk at the time, you'd get somebody new that didn't know who you were or what you did from a business perspective, and they weren't really good at technology just yet. And so that experience would lead to something that would take somebody else maybe 5 minutes to fix, would take this new person an hour, maybe 2 hours to fix. And so that process, it was not scalable.
Right. So it just became very costly, and now you're finding new revenue to pay for the margins essentially, and it's kind of what's that. Interesting. So you realize that it's not scalable. You say, okay, that's it. I've got to rebuild this business. What did you do?
So I didn't really know where to start, to be honest with you. And I just started digging into books. And I read, well, how do people create a business? And obviously the E-Myth by Michael Gerber was a great place to start. And then I read Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the concepts were wonderful. Get the right people on the right seats. Perfect. How do I do that? And so I kind of kept digging deeper, and I found a book called The Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish, and laid out this one-page business planning process and started getting into business planning. Like, okay, I can buy into that. Wonderful. And then eventually found my way into a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And that really laid out for me what was missing, the structure that I needed, the blueprint of how to run a business from creating a vision and core values and getting the people right and how to have meetings and process issues. And it was like an eye-opening moment where I just realized if I want to create a business, I need to start focusing on these things that are business related. And it began with the vision and the core values, which seemed to me like they weren't really that important, if I'm honest with myself and with you guys. But I came to realize how important they really are in running a business, because I was able to then start creating the vision of where we wanted to go, and then started creating roles within our organization instead of having a bunch of people running around to try and be like me, air quote, which is a terrible way to hire somebody and to try and manage them, because there's no way I can relay to people what I'm thinking as I'm thinking it. So we started chopping up and saying, all right, what are the different roles inside of IT support? And we came up, well, there's obviously a help desk. So we put people in a role where the responsibility is to pick up the phone and help people with their issues and close 10 to 12 tickets a day. And so we clearly defined what success looks like that for that. And we came up with this proactive process. I was able to go back and look at all the things that have gone wrong over the past 12, 13 years. And if I was there the day of, could I have prevented it? Well, yeah, if I would have checked this box and set the server to shut down gracefully during a power outage, I could have prevented an 8-hour downtime. So is every server set up to shut down gracefully during a power outage? Yes or no? And I just created a list of hundreds of these yes or no questions, and I assigned a role for somebody to go in. And these are things that my tools could never tell me. I had to go in and check, is the new employee setup process documented properly? Is there a form for people to fill out? So we collect every bit of information, and things that I realized that it wasn't the tool, it was the process that allowed me to be able to have the information. And so creating the role to perform the process, and then another role to use the outcome of that checklist to start building a strategy. So we know that a server is going to be coming out of warranty in a year and a half. Let's start doing the analysis now. Does it make sense to move to the cloud? Do we keep the server? Do we do nothing? That's fine. Here's the risk associated with it. But in the process, people really like talking about stuff 18 months from now and saying I have to do some $15,000 project or a $20,000 project versus, sorry, but your server's on fire today, and I'm going to need $20,000 right now. My CFO friends do not appreciate that. And so in doing so, we created these different roles to be really proactive and to be strategic. And they never touch a help desk. They never, a printer issue never crosses their plate. And they're focused all the time on being truly proactive and providing a strategy for our client. And what we found is when we start looking at it from a strategy perspective, what I thought was proactive before, having all of these different tools, these bits and pieces, versus having a vision of where you want to go. And for the cost of all those different tools, you can literally have the Cadillac and move to have less stuff and consolidate on less platforms and get more from less players. And you oftentimes, you're able to do more and spend less. And that was really the outcome of having a strategy, right? So creating these processes and these roles, and then managing them, because I also was not a manager. So realizing bringing somebody in, instead of promoting an engineer to be a manager, bringing somebody in that had business experience managing but no technical experience was also a big turning point for us, because we found that an engineer would just try and fix the problem himself, whereas a true business manager will create a process to resolve the issue. And so all these different areas of roles and responsibilities and management were really what we needed to do from the get-go. But what I started with as an engineer was just trying to fix problems and implement tools. So
all that sounds great. And I 100% agree that's the route that you need to go as a business owner in terms of standardizing and providing a lot of clarity to your staff will help you kind of scale and grow too. But still going back to the, oh gosh, I have to change this business. I mean, did you just fire everybody and start over? Or was this kind of like okay, we're going to go create a new business within our business and we're going to invest time there. And as that business scales, we're going to wean down this business that doesn't work. How did that work?
Yeah, so it was the latter. It was figuring out, okay, so now I understand what's truly required to meet the expectations of everybody, to know their to keep their network from crashing and to have a strategy and a budget for what their technology and spend will be. In order to do that, I need to follow this process. In order to follow this process, it's X amount per month. I know to go through this process, it cost me $3,000 a month, and that's our minimum. So I'd have to go back to our clients and say, you're at $200 a month. To meet your expectations, it's going to be $3,000 a month. And I heard everything under the sun from you're too big for your britches now. I knew you when you were a snot nosed kid to people just being understanding. One out of every so many would stay and buy in because we had plenty that were above that level, and we would migrate. The ones that were below it that just didn't make sense, I would literally have to invest in finding a new IT person and helping them migrate and transfer services over at our cost because I wanted to do people right and go through that transition. We went from hundreds and hundreds of clients over time, what I thought would take a year, to closer to 3 years. We went all the way down to 19 clients at our lowest point. And we went from 24 employees, and this was probably the hardest part, down to 8 employees at our lowest point. Some of them, as we started like creating roles and finding a role to put them in with accountability, you're responsible to close 10 to 12 tickets a day. You closed 2 today. How can we support you? Oh, I'll get better today. I totally understand. And tomorrow I know I'm going to be able to close more. So daily huddle comes in. You closed 2 tickets again today. What can I do to support you? After about a week or 2 weeks of that, they realized that the new direction of the company just wasn't for them. And whether it was the decision to go one way or the requirement for accountability, they would find new jobs. Others, I literally had broke. I had turned them into this chaotic firefighting reality, and getting them to settle in to just do proactive tasks. They just couldn't break their habits of doing so. And I had to help them find new jobs because we would talk and just say, I know what I should do and I want to do it. I see the importance of doing it. I just can't get myself to do it. And I feel like I'm impeding on what's really our friendship at this point. And I think I should. And so, okay, you know what? Let's work together and start helping you get into a new place, a new home. And it was really tough because some of those people have been with me from the get go. So that was tough. And I felt like I was running really fast because I would be bringing on a new client and then I would be getting rid of 4, 5, 6, 8. And so it was like running and sprinting on a treadmill because during that time I was literally going as fast as I could to get through this, but seeing no real impact financially for all the hard work and effort we were doing as we were undoing the bad business, basically building we had done from the first 12 years. So it was a terrible time, and I don't wish that upon anybody.
That's really interesting. So not only were you unwinding your clients, but your employees too. Did you know that you were going to have to get rid of employees along the way, or did that just become a natural sort of thing as you started implementing more structure and implementing more accountability and starting to find that employees really couldn't meet the requirements of the job at that point?
I knew the direction of the company in talking to them, they wanted more structure. And my intention was to keep everybody and just to build this out. Okay, cool. Well, we have this new model, this new way. We will bring on new clients the new way. And as we do, we won't have a loss of revenue. We'll just shift out the old. And it wasn't my intention. It just occurred through the process of, you know, some people didn't want to be in a particular role. They wanted to continue doing everything and not really be accountable to any one thing in the process. And they would understand the logic of why it's important to be in one role. But, like I said, it wasn't really for them. And so it just naturally occurred. Sometimes with I lost people that I wanted to keep.
Why wasn't it as simple though? Because I mean, we've gone through it. We're probably going to go through it again. But you go through these as you continue to scale. You hit these glass ceilings, and you realize I can't continue along this path. It's just not sustainable long term. It's fine for a 3-man, 4-man shop, but it's not going to be fine for a 15-man shop. And then same thing, not fine for 50, not fine for 100, and so on and so forth. And you said that my intention was to just keep revenue about the same, cut clients. So you keep revenue the same, but the profit margins are slowly increasing over time, allowing you to reinvest into the business. Why wasn't it that easy?
I think getting people out of old habits was probably our biggest challenge, and helping them find a role. What was not easy was probably the emotional toll it took as we had these conversations with clients over and over that were upset. We had to disrupt their what was we were their IT people for years. The emotional toll it took with staff members as we would put them into a role and it wouldn't work out. We tried to put them into another role and that wouldn't work out. And then eventually it would, that creates a certain amount of discord in the organization as a whole. Because when people are unhappy in their position, it's tough to hide that in a tight knit company. And so working through that and keeping them in, basically keeping their eye on where we're going while still battling through the changes of today, because it was a lot of change to go through. And that's not easy either. So we went from such poorly defined anything, and I would just come in and basically tell people what to do as I passed by them in the hall because they really didn't know what to do during the day, to here's exactly what you need to do, getting them to get into those habits, realizing that I'm not a manager at all. And that's a tremendous weakness of mine. And bringing people in to fill that role to help with that was also instrumental. But I think just the long hours trying to figure out, second guessing yourself, is this really the right direction? Is this going to work? Because it wasn't always just remove revenue and add revenue. There was times where I think a couple quarters we had some really significant losses that also hurt. So it added stress as well, knowing that this promised land is where we wanted to go and we're headed there. But there are several factors that made it tough.
Definitely the habits component of it. It's hard to break old habits. And even if you can break the old habits, you have to replace them with new habits. Otherwise, there's like this void. And I feel like that's almost what some of the people on your staff were going through. Was like, okay, they had this firefighting mentality, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. And now I just have to do this one little thing. And it's hard to fill that void. Yeah, I just feel like that's kind of what was going on there. It's definitely a tough spot to be in. And I'll say this, that if anybody's listening out there wants to learn how to change their habits, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, fantastic book. Yeah, it's a fantastic book to change people's habits. But I mean, everything you're talking about, Tony, is super relatable. Great story. So how do you maintain, once you came out of the other side of all this, everything was kind of working, you got through all the pain and the struggles, what do you do to maintain this new system that you have, make sure that it doesn't go awry, and make sure that you continue to build in a good direction and not have to go through something like this again?
So the cool part is, and this is where it starts getting a little uplifting, it's the same thing that we did to get through those tough times. It's creating a vision of where you want to go. It's building that 10-year plan, which when you start building a plan, by the way, you naturally are really terrible at it. Doing business planning and trying to forecast where you're going the first time around, unless you're a natural and there's those out there, you're probably going to suck, and then you're going to get better at it over time. But creating that plan of where we want it to go in the next 10 years, bringing it back to 3 years of what do we got to do to get to that 10-year vision, bringing that back to, okay, what do I have to do this year? What's the most important things I need to do this year to meet my 3-year goals? And then breaking that down quarterly. What's the most important thing I need to do this quarter? What's the one most important thing to get to where we want to go? And creating that guide, that light that everybody's on board with where we want to go from a vision perspective, and breaking that down to this quarter, we need to make sure that we have our list of questions done. This next quarter, we need to make sure that we have 2 people in the role of that proactive role. This quarter, we need to make sure that we're doing this work for 19 clients, and we're doing X number of visits proactively, and breaking it down so we just have one. That was really all you got to do. You need to do one thing every quarter consistently towards that plan, and share it with everybody in the organization so they have a part in it, and they understand where the company is going and what that one most important thing. And over time, those one things add up in a tremendous fashion, and they change the course and the trajectory of your business. So that business planning component of it, that's where the secret sauce is for us. And keeping that going now as we move forward. What I thought originally when I first started the company, I had to be good at technology, to have a good technology company and provide great service. I needed to be good at business. strategy, planning, management to provide great technical services. And it's counterintuitive because I thought I had to study more engineering. No, I needed to study and put my focus more into core values and roles and responsibility and business planning. And in doing so, we had much better technical capabilities, which was counterintuitive for me for a while.
How do you recognize, like if you were to do it all again, how would you recognize that this business is not scalable? Would you be able to do it sooner? And while you're thinking through this, kind of like if you're a listener, if somebody's listening to this and they're going, man, a lot of the pains that you've described kind of sound like what I'm experiencing. How do you confirm that? How do you like 100% know, oh my gosh, this is just going to suck the life out of everybody and it can't continue this way?
I think the quickest way to get to that for me, and I don't mean to turn this into a commercial for Traction and EOS.
Traction's a great book, a really great book.
But if I had a time machine, I'd go back because I would put so much energy. I had no shortage of willpower and desire to get to where we wanted to go. I just put it in and sprayed that into so many different directions that it basically all that energy, it wasn't efficient and it didn't move the business in any particular direction because it wasn't directed towards any one particular thing. And so looking at the business you're in and starting from the basics and beginning the business planning process. Where is your business in 10 years? What does that look like? And create a vivid image of where you want it to be and go big. And then start breaking down, okay, you could turn that into math. If you want to make $1 million or 10 million or $1 billion or whatever it is, start doing the math. Well, based on what you're selling today, what do you need to do? How many of those widgets or hours or whatever it is do you need to get to sell that? And then start breaking it down. Okay, if I need to get to selling 1 million hours, that means that I need to have this many people. If I need 1,000 people right now, I've got 10. And you start doing the math to understand what the goals are going to require. And the math will basically tell you if your goals are achievable or attainable, or if you need to change the way that you're going about your business for scale. And then just break it down from 10 years to 3 years, from 3 years to 1 year. And in what math do I need this quarter to reach those goals? So as silly as it is in my mind at the time, because I was an engineer providing hourly services to people, I just needed to do that during the day and I was quote unquote successful. I needed to put time into understanding where I was going and start creating some goals and then create action, like tangible actions where I know that I've completed. Yes or no, did I do this activity 20 times this quarter, whatever it is, to then reach that goal and working from that perspective instead of selling your service or your product or performing the actual operations. And again, this was counterintuitive to me, putting time into the business planning process versus the day-to-day was what I would recommend to people that feel that they're in that situation, that reactive spiral of death is what we called it.
Do you execute this with a team? How do you hold yourself accountable to actually making sure that you follow that process and do the quarterly planning and not just slip back into the problems of the day or whatever the case is and just forget about that?
So this comes back to I've learned over the course of time that I don't have to be the best or the smartest at anything. I just have to be disciplined. And so we do our quarterly planning every quarter. We do our annual planning every year. Every year we make a new 3-year and 10-year target for where we want to go. When we do our quarterly planning, we create our goals for the quarter of the most important things. And in our meeting structures every week, every person in our company is part of a meeting structure and they meet weekly to go through issues and process them and make sure they never happen again. During that weekly meeting, everybody reviews our quarterly goals and we figure out if we're on target for that goal or if we're off target. And if we're off target, it's an issue that we process during that weekly meeting to get back on target. And just the cadence of following that weekly that weekly meeting that ties into the quarterly goal, that ties into the annual goal, that ties into the 3-year target, and then into the 10-year vision. It's the 20-mile march that Jim Collins talks about instead of trying to go and do everything all at once.
One thing that I've always questioned about Traction, I love the book and we follow it too at our firm. But the one thing that I've always, it's been like really difficult for me to understand is that the resetting of the 10-year goals, do you reset those annually, or do you put the stake in the sand and it stays there until you accomplish it?
So I'm not a traction implementer, and I'm let me just put throw it out there that what they say and what I do may not be totally aligned. We redo that every year. And we keep record of what our 3-year goals were and what our 10-year targets were over time, but we recalibrate every year of where we're going and what that looks like, because honestly, it changes. Our core values have changed. Something that I thought was set in stone, we're a little different now, and that's okay. So I like the stake in the sand when I go back and look at our business planning when we started this in 2015, so 5 years ago now, and really got deep into that process and looking back at what our goals are. And this is where I say that we were really terrible. What I thought was an annual goal was a 3-year goal.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought would take a year took 3. But I recalibrate, and I think it's okay to what you think is your mission and even your vision. It could change over time because we're not living in a static world.
I like your approach. I like your approach a lot. We need to reevaluate every year because, like you just said, the world changes, the market changes, and what we knew 12 months ago might not necessarily be relevant anymore. We might have learned more information that means that we need to take that into account and refactor where we're heading. But I also like what you guys do in terms of keeping a log of those 10-year goals. That way you can celebrate them whenever you do accomplish them, or you can say, wow, look at how far we've come, that we're completely in a different direction now, but we're in a much better direction, and let's celebrate this. I think that's really cool. I think that's a really good way to do it. And that's kind of our approach too, but I didn't know, because I've been in groups where people they just stick with their 3-year goal no matter what.
Yeah.
That stresses me out. I don't know, anyway, well, let's get Tony. What's next for you in AMC?
We're at this really interesting time in the history of technology. We're at this chasm of, well, Microsoft was telling, and we're big on Microsoft because it's such a big dominant force in our industry, right? We're living in a Microsoft world. And our angle is to really focus, right? So I'm a big fan of other products out there, and Google and Apple, but we're going to be really good at Microsoft. And what Microsoft is saying is that what we've been doing for the past 20 years, it's not in line with how we're working. And only about 10% of the market even really understands what that looks like. So what's next for us is just educating people on what their life could be like with more modern technology, helping them get a visual and understand where they should be, and then helping them realize that they're probably going to end up even paying less and do more with their business and for their people, most importantly. And so keeping on the course of that and delivering and the message on that front, because at the end of the day, it is about the people. And when we focus on doing more with less stuff, our lives just get better in so many different ways. So evangelizing that, and you brought up, Brandon, celebrating some of your goals as you hit them. I think that's a really important thing, right? So we've gone through that's business, right? There's peaks and valleys, and then there's more peaks, right? It goes in cycles. But we worked so hard to get to this point. I think we're going to have a little fun and enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey, because we're not going to a destination. We're continuously working down this path and finding ways to make it fun and enjoyable, not just for my team, but for the people that we serve and the people we're around and the people that we get to talk to, and hopefully inspire to be having a little bit more fun in their own ways, kind of the direction that's what's next for us.
Sometimes you got to take that step back and celebrate the wins for sure. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, what you have going on at AMC, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I love talking to other business owners that are on the same journey and just enjoy being able to communicate. And you could call me. My number is 909-592-0224. You can literally call me and I'll talk to you about this journey. If you want to learn more about IT services, if you have an organization with between 20 and 500 computer using people that you want them to be more productive, our website is amcsolutions.com. You can take a look at that. If you're interested, drop us a line. Happy to help in whatever way, because that's really the fun part, is connecting with others and then talking and working, because I learn just as much through sharing these stories with others, because everybody else has a great story like this too. And when you kind of let it all out there and be vulnerable and really get into the real truths of what's going on is when you start really growing. So.
No, absolutely. Tony, we want to thank you for coming on the show today. This has been a fantastic episode. I know I certainly learned a lot. Was really quiet through it, and I was just taking everything in. Loved your story. Very relatable. Just want to thank you again for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I had a great time and appreciate being a part of it. It's a great show you got here and happy to be part of it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on iTunes and share the show with other business owners who may be facing their own growth challenges. And if you own a professional services firm, consider joining our private community. The Staying Power Collective is a community where owners of accounting, law, and consulting firms discuss best practices for running and growing virtual businesses. You'll get access to our Slack group, and you'll have a Zoom meeting once a month with a small group of other firm owners. To apply for the group, head on over to www.stayingpowercollective.com and fill out the brief form. And if you have suggestions for future topics or guests, or if you have general questions or feedback, send us an email at contact@stayingpowercollective.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.